Our topic today is divination tools. When you're beginning your spiritual path, divination tools are a starting point as you learn to tune in to your intuition. They can boost our connection with our higher self, spirit guides, and angels. Think of these tools as training wheels until you're confident enough to talk to spirit without them. The tools presented here are the common ones that most people can access, but every tradition the world over has its own way of divining the wisdom of the universe. Find the ones that resonate with you and make them yours. Stick with us to the end of the video for a demonstration on bibliomancy and automatic writing with Lisa.
Hey, Mystics. If you're new here, welcome. If you already know us, welcome back. I'm Susie Parker Goins.
I'm Kai Bertrand.
And I'm Lisa Stewart. Welcome to Mystic Mosaic Podcast. We're here to help clarify, illuminate, normalize, and encourage you as you develop your gifts so you can confidently build a sustainable lifestyle for you, your family, and even your career.
We're providing information to use as a launching point for your own spiritual journey. We're not doctors, and we won't be giving medical advice. Plus, we won't be giving free readings. The information provided here is for educational purposes only. Let's start the conversation. So we're talking about divination tools today. And so a little bit of history of divination is that a lot of cultures use it all through history. There, thank you very much. We'll go on to the next section. No, I'm wrong. It's just divination has been used throughout history. You've heard of the oracle at Delphi, maybe? That happens. A lot of history is based on a Greek myth is based on what the oracle said, and everybody ignores it, so everybody dies. You can use divination in with clouds or fire, even animal entrails. People have done looked at the weather and made decisions or determined from there what their path was. Natural disasters in a more, well, not really modern sense, but in a more practical sense, you've got people who are called water witches, and they use dowsing rods to find water in a new area. I've heard several stories from people I know personally who said, yeah, my grandfather did that. And nobody believed him. And yet here we are. Also I believe it was the Victorian era, when there was the popularity of spiritualism, they would have seances. Of course, that opened up to a lot of fraud to happen, but there would be group seances, and they had a thing called table tipping, where they said that the spirits were moving the table about, and it was also it doesn't have the spiritual impact of what we're going to be talking about today. So let's roll into Lisa, defining divination within the context of our podcast today. Take it, Lisa.
What is divination? It's a form of energetic communication. It's an ancient practice of connecting to your intuition, spirit guides, source, and even your ancestors. Divination enables us to get answers in other forms. It's an external focal point. What I love about it is that it moves my perceptions outward, outside of myself, and onto the tool. And it will also help dispel fears. Again, we've talked about using intuition and how intuition is the nice, soft voice that gently guides you versus yelling at you. When done right, it gets your ego out of the way so that you can listen. It allows me to step back to reevaluate and consider my motives. It also allows me to consider my actions and the outcomes from a very different vantage point. My intuition leaps to life, and that's when I can actively listen for guidance. So that's all great, but sometimes I hesitate using my tools. Kai, can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so if you have hesitation regarding using divination tools, because it's a common thing. Like people always like, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I should do that, or and it's because the tools that we are going to be talking about, a lot of them, in fact, most of them, if not all of them, are considered to be some sort of witchcraft or tools of the devil or what have you. And so if you feel an aversion to one or all of them, there's a reason. It could be a deeply held belief that you could have from your own life experiences, such as somebody told you these things were bad or they were evil or, whatever. If you play with that, you're going to end up talking to the devil or, however you want to do that. It could also be a belief that was passed down from an ancestor. Remember that a lot of times, a lot of our belief systems were actually based on superstitions. And so those beliefs get passed down to us, generation after generation, even though we live in the modern age of science and reason and all that other stuff, we still have, the remnants of superstitions and things that, even though now they don't make any sense, but we still believe them because it's a belief that came embedded from our ancestors. It could also be the remnant of a traumatic experience from a past life. So for instance, like in your past life, you might have had like, a bad experience with a ladder and a black cat, associated the two together, right? Which is why you believe that, you can't walk under a ladder near a black cat or whatever. It could be something like that. And there's also a fear of connecting to something malevolent, which is certainly a possibility. Like, not going to lie about that. But there are lots of safe ways to do divination. So if you pick one of the safer ways of doing it, it's not an issue. So yeah, but many metaphysical practitioners have run into this. It bears looking into if you're interested in learning more about the many tools and methods of divination. If you find a hesitancy towards one or the other, if you want to look into it, we suggest that you do. If not, find something else. There are lots and lots of different ways of doing divination. We're going to put a list of the common ones down in the description box, so you can just look at them, see which ones resonate with you, and then do your research and see what works.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many to explore, but today we want to talk about our favorites because there are just hundreds and hundreds of divination tools, and we don't have time for that. But the most accessible divination tools that the three of us use are cards, oracle and tarot cards. Again, they provide an external focal point. It takes, that phrase, you're too close to it, it's too subjective. The cards help you kind of externalize that problem so it's no longer yours. You could memorize what the book says that accompanies the tarot cards, and you can also take a look at the symbols to help identify and intuit what some of the messages are coming through with the cards. But not every symbol means the same thing to everyone. I personally would recommend that you start your own glossary. There's a lot of glossaries out there, but again, take what resonates and leave the rest. Susie, don't you have a story about?
Oh, yeah. I learned to read tarot intuitively. That was a class, and that's when I realized, oh yeah, I'm okay with this. I did strive to memorize the book, but memorizing, nah, I don't really do it. So when I was learning to do tarot, I was working in a corporate office for a big restaurant chain, and I'd run around from cube to cube saying, oh, I got some tarot cards you guys want me to read you, and they're all like, yeah, let's do this. So I'm throwing down cards for this one particular person. She was also an in-house temp like me. And I'm throwing them down, and I gave a textbook meaning for the Three of Swords. Now, in the Rider-Waite deck, it's a heart that has three swords stuck in it. So I don't even remember what that textbook definition is anymore. But as I said it to her, I realized I got that intuitive hit that's not her. That's not what the thing was. And I looked at her and I said, that's not you. That's not right. And as I said, you're really sensitive. So, and this was a place, an office department that we just kind of threw grief at each other left and right. And we would tease each other. But what I got from that single card was that it was really hitting her hard in other places that we didn't mean it to land, but it did. So she was very sensitive, and every time we threw some kind of barb at her, it really broke her. And I looked at her and I said that, and that was the first time somebody went, and not being a reader to go, yes. At the time, it was like, I got it right. I nailed it. And that certainly informed my interactions with her after that. So while the books are great, you've also got your intuition. These cards are opening you up to your intuitive hits, pay attention to them. It's going to make the difference in the quality of the read.
Yeah, absolutely. And these tools are a perfect way to tap into your intuition. I mean, we talked about it before. They're great training wheels until you get comfortable enough talking to spirit on your own. Another tool that we all use are pendulums. So pendulums are a little weighted item on the end of some sort of chain or string or something. So here's one that I struggle using with. But Susie, you also have a story about a pendulum, don't you?
Yes, I do. Of course I do. I was taking a Magic 101 class and we were looking at divination's tools in the course of that. And one of them was pendulums. And up until that point, I was like, I don't, nah, they're too difficult. I have to be too detailed. Meh, 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 meh. And so it happened in a witchy shop. And so she had a display of pendulums. And that was the exercise, is that we were to determine where a hidden object was. So I pulled off a pendulum and I held my hand out and I did the things. And I said, you know, I don't have a good relationship with pendulums. Is that because I have an innate distrust of them? And the pendulum swung so hard, yes, it just about smacked me in the face. And so I was like, okay. So
there's your answer.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you're right. I get it. And so I've been able to work with them ever since then. But it's one of those things, like I have it. I'll use necklaces, I'll use whatever I have. But yeah, they're great. I really do like them. And I'm not just saying that because we are talking about pendulums,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can work with them if you want.
Yeah, I am incredibly eager to learn more about how my pendulum and I can work together and coexist peacefully, because you can get more than yes or no answers from the pendulums. You can use them in a sort of different ways, and you can bounce from one question to the other. Once you get your answer, it's like, okay, let's move on to the next question, next question. So they can be very pointed and focused in that way. We talk about clearing and filling in with pendulums. I know that in order to clear a space, or at least to clear the pendulum to start, I'll have it swing counterclockwise. And then, of course, if there's any filling in when it comes to energetic cuts and things like that, it will then, because nature abhors a vacuum. So, the pendulum will help fill that all back in. Did I say that right, Susie?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we talk a lot about clearing and filling in. And the pendulum is like that external focal point. So you can ask, do you need to be cleared? You can get a yes or a no on it. And then if clearing does need to happen, and I know practitioners who will use the pendulum as their focal point. And so clearing, as I see it, is it swings in a counterclockwise direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, once you clear, you want to fill in. We keep singing that song.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will go in a clockwise direction.
Mm-hmm.
So you're calling in source because, like you said, what was it? Nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah.
And so does my dog. But, that's another thing altogether.
My cats are riding my vacuums these days. I don't know. I don't know. But we will have to talk more about using that pendulum and filling in. I'd like to learn more about that. But in addition to that, we also use mats and charts, which are really gradients of answers. Those are really fun to use. Again, I talked about moving from one answer to the next. They're also very good at helping to find objects and clearing chakras. And then, of course, grids. We've talked about, I don't know if we've talked about crystal grids, but we can also use pendulum grids as well. So it helps to inform directions, our chakras, elements, astrological houses, as well as the traditional fan-shaped maps that we use.
Kai's got some available too, doesn't she?
Yeah, I do have some grids that are available on my website. I'll probably put in a screenshot to show a couple of them here, so that you can see what they look like, and then you can get them on my website. But yeah, there are entire books that are dedicated to pendulum charts that are fan shaped, and they give you directions on how to use them, and they all kinds of, you can ask questions regarding health and money and love and relationships of any kind. I mean, all kinds of stuff. There's entire books, like I said, devoted to different kinds of questions that you can ask with your pendulum. So, look for that as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Kai. I want to mention the three of us had a brief conversation before we started this recording about why I'm struggling with my pendulum. And I just quickly wanted to share some of that information. Kai reminded me to keep at least salt my pendulum, right? And I keep my pendulum in a bowl of salt constantly. And I still couldn't figure out why it wasn't working for me. Then she asked, was I wearing a pendant? I've got this amethyst pendant, which I love. It's my moon pendant, but that could have interfered with some of the Q&A that I was having as well. But I think in the end, we all know that I was wearing an entity around my head like a turban. So that could have helped block any kind of true communication with my higher self. So those are 3 things to look out for when you're using your pendulum. Hopefully you're not wearing one like a turban.
And you can ask your pendulum if you've got one too.
Yeah. I did.
And did it tell you that you had one?
I said, am I clear? It said yes. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's one of those, that's a trick question, because it's like, of course, if you have somebody attached to you, it's going to say, yeah, you're clear.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Like you have to, depending on how strong it is, it can influence the answer. So if it's weak enough, then, source can actually get through and say, yeah, you have an attachment. But if it's really strong, it's like, because it's a small device and it's working on a very small connection to source, it can influence.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's a
Hadn't thought
caveat.
of that.
So if that doesn't work, then maybe Susie can lead us into learning a little bit more about muscle testing.
Yeah, in using divination tools, we're definitely of the mind where you don't have to do it one particular way. So if you don't have a weighted object, I mean, we used, what was it, when I was pregnant with my first kid, we used a paper clip, a rubber band, and a pencil to figure out who my kid was or what my kid was. Yeah, I don't know if that went well, but you can also use your body as a pendulum, and it's called applied kinesiology, or more commonly known as muscle testing, because your body, there's a book by Peter Van de Koe called Your Body Keeps the Score, which is about how your body is rewritten when trauma happens, and how to identify those places in your body, in your brain, for where you need to release. Where I'm going with this, though, in a rather circuitous way, is that applied kinesiology. Have you seen those folks? Like, there's this one guy at the events. His name is John Thompson, and he will show people the impact that his product has. So he'll have people stretch their arm out, their dominant arm out, and he will push on it. And then he uses his product, and it will get stronger. And so, yeah, if when he's doing a baseline, your arm may give. When he does his product and your arm is stronger, then you know that's what's right for you. Well, that can help you confirm your intuition. And while you're not always able to stand in the middle of Trader Joe's and go, is this food good for me? Is this food not? There are a lot of other ways you can check in. The first one I learned is that you put your fingers, your ring and your thumb together, and you can pull through it. Honestly, that doesn't work for me. I can just like flip it around. What does work with me is the swaying. So I can put my hands on my solar plexus, I stand up, and I can say, is this the right thing for me? Now, for me, yes is a sway forward and a sway back. Yes is a sway forward, no is a sway back. And if I really get into it, people think I've been day drinking and all that stuff, but you don't have to make it a real big thing. It is a physical representation, that visual, tangible representation of what your intuition is telling you. My chiropractor years ago used it with me and Joey, and because of that mother-child connection, he was able to test me and find out what was going on with Joey. It's again, it's like breathing. It's really portable and you can do it anytime, and it's not really big, but as you develop your sense of intuition about it and trust your intuition, it's really valuable. But then, of course, there are some of us, she looks pointedly at Kai, who don't do it that way. Kai, how about you?
Yeah, no, I am I guess you could say I cheated on this because I have been not only seeing things since I was a baby, I was actually hearing my guides from when I was very young. So having, so for me, I could always hear them and I could always see them. And all the tools for me actually came later. When I was a teenager, it was like, oh, that's a book on witchcraft. I think I'll check that out. Like, maybe I'll do some minor spells. And then it was like, oh, a tarot deck. Let's check that out. So for me, the tools actually came later. Which is, other people I'm sure have had that same experience, but so it's kind of like a flip-floppy thing. So sometimes people start with the tools and then develop their intuition. For me, I already had the intuition kind of stuff happening, and then the tools just kind of enhanced it, like made it sharper, made it much more. It was like I took my intuition and the tools helped me train it, basically, is what happened there.
Wow.
I love that. I love that idea, Kai, because we all say that we all are born intuitive and psychic, right? That's a given. And there are just those of us who are stronger and who embrace that sense, right, of empowerment through talking to the other side. And some of us either ignore it or give up on it. But I do like the point about using the tools to really help to focus and enhance your skills.
Yeah. I mean, because I think for when I started using the tools, then like the messages got clearer for me. Like now when I read from a deck, like the cards are literally speaking to me. Like I lay out the thing and it's like, okay, we're over here. This means this. This is this in relation to that. This is related to this, and so I literally hear the cards speak. Like it's
Awesome.
almost like everything is like coming together. And then I wanted to comment on the muscle testing. Like I often use muscle testing myself, especially if I'm looking for beliefs, because I will be looking for something, like I'm like, why do I keep doing this? And then I use muscle testing to test for it. So I actually do these two fingers is what I was taught, not these. I use these two fingers. And then so I mean, I'll do a basic thing like, okay, obviously what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I have this belief. Like, is it mine? Yes or no? Is it, then is it a past life? Yes or no? Is it an ancestor thing? Yes or no? And then that's how I can narrow down where it's at, and then I know where to find it, so I can go get it.
Cool.
And so that's what I use it for.
Very cool.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
I have a client who uses, I think she calls it Theta Healing. And so her hands will sit there and she'll check it and she'll do the same thing with it, but she uses these fingers in between the others and she'll like just do it really fast. But it can happen anyway for anybody. I like that you used divination as a way to confirm your intuition. You were okay with your intuition, you grew up with it. And you, from your stories, you haven't been it wasn't knocked out of you or talked out of you by your family or your culture. It was just, no, this is what we do, and then you're able to focus it. So I think we're all in agreement that these tools are used to help us get ourselves out of the way. Yay.
Yeah.
And so there are more ways to do divination than we've listed here, for sure. There are methods most practitioners use when giving a reading. What we're going to do now is talk about a couple more of the common ways of communicating with source.
Right, we are, Kai. The first thing we want to do is talk about intention, right? Intention sets everything. It sets the table. So when you are intending to do a reading or using any of these tools, you want to be specific or you might get jinxed. So what's the question you want answered? What's your objective, really? Is it a game? Here's a Ouija board cautionary tale. I don't know, those of you who are listening to us, I don't know how old you are, but the three of us are a very, very similar age. I remember that the Ouija board was introduced by the Parker brothers back in the 1970s. It was a commercial introduction into spirituality, right next to the Magic 8 Ball. I love the Magic 8 Ball, but the Ouija board was viewed as a game. Unfortunately, it is much, much more than that. What we implore you to do is to research and find experienced, safe resources and practitioners who use it, who can guide you. I know personally, when my mother bought our Ouija board, it didn't take me about a year later to like take that thing and chuck it and burn it, because I didn't want that thing in our house. I'm like, no, bad things are going to happen with that Ouija board. So be mindful about the tools that you do use, and take a class or talk to a practitioner who's been using them for a while. They'll guide you in the right direction. The next thing
I think to not take it lightly.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using them for spiritual growth, like your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, you can lead us through that one. But yeah.
Well, I just wanted to make another quick comment about Ouija boards, and that is that they are even though Parker Brothers brought it in as a game, it is actually like a very powerful form of divination.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's something that if you do not know what you're doing can actually cause you no end of trouble. I have personal experience in that.
Yeah.
Because quick story, when I was a teenager, playing with all the tools, I was playing with a Ouija board. I brought one home, and I went to a Catholic girls' high school. Okay. And I brought that bad boy home, tucked it under my bed. I had nightmares for days after that. And so finally, I told my mom, and she was like, well, of course you have nightmares. Look at this thing that you got under your bed. So she tossed it. And after that, I was fine. And because back then I didn't understand that Ouija boards actually open portals. And if you open a portal, you must close it. And if you don't, you are subject to whatever happens to come through, which is why I kept getting nightmares.
Good grief. So, nobody knows that Ouija boards open portals. I didn't know that. I just knew that strange shit was happening around us, and I didn't want it in the house anymore.
Yeah. And that's why, because it is a form of divination that literally opens a portal for communication.
Yikes.
So yeah, so that's why it's like, it's really not a game, regardless of your intention. Like if you were like, oh, I'm just playing, it's like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And even the Ouija board encourages more than one person to use it, unlike, a set of tarot cards or a pendulum or any other divination tools that we're using. And when you are blending those kinds of energies together to talk to spirit, that could also lead you down that dark path of, what did we invite in here with us? So
yeah. And the part of the reason why you have more people on the planchette is so that you have more power to open the portal.
And they listed this as a toy.
Yeah. So yeah, not an advocate.
No,
personally.
No, neither am I.
So
yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on, because we could talk about that all day. But let's talk about mindset, right? So when you're using these tools, you want to be in the right mindset. And what do I mean by that? Well, there are two different mindsets. We've got the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. Now, if some of you run your own businesses or work in corporate America, you're going to know that this is like a business type of term that we use. Just as a brief foray into it, a fixed mindset is very restrictive. It's fixed. It's in the name. And it's about one's inability to change. These are based on limiting beliefs. These are based in fear of change, right? Because none of us like change. And then, of course, it's the fear of looking dumb or not cool, right? But the growth mindset, this is the one that I espouse. It has a basis in emotional intelligence. It's being open to other perspectives. It's about being coachable, right? Because when I'm learning something, is there an opportunity to either relearn it or maybe take a new perspective when it comes to kind of working through some of either limiting beliefs or a new skill that I'm working on? It's a willingness to learn. And also, everything is a skill, so that everything can be learned. So keep that in mind. A lot of times we come to starting our own business, and we might be coming from corporate America from a specific role in your job. But then when you start something brand new, like this big world of creating your own business, suddenly you're taking on a new role. And that role might be CEO. There's no might about it. You are taking on the role of CEO. And that CEO is the chief bottle washer, as well as the chief decision maker. And I'm a big proponent of using these divination tools to then help build on the facts that you are pulling in as information when you're making your decisions. These tools, your intuition, then helps to add dimension and color to the facts as you are making these decisions. So think about that as you move forward in your daily life.
You're watching the Mystic Mosaic podcast. Hit the like button and subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell to be notified when we upload another video. It helps YouTube share the episode with others who want to learn more about this topic. Let's get back into it.
Now, let's move on to our journeys. Susie?
Yeah, these are all skills you can learn. And it's what skill do you want to learn? Because as we're going to launch into, it is your journey, and therefore you make your choice about it. So while we'll sit here and talk to you about this is what we do and this is our experience, you get your own experience. There's no set path. There's no set tool that you have to start with. You don't have to start with the tool that's popular right now. I mean, I know we do that. I got a new deck, so Lisa got the deck. I got the deck. Phyllis got the deck. But I use that deck, so that's okay. But it's just a chance. You get to figure out and listen. You get to listen to your guides and intuition about which tool you want to start with. So, as in my case, the pendulum didn't always it didn't always work with me. That's okay. Say you prefer to sit in front of a fire and watch the flames or a candle, or you can do mirror scrying. You go with the tool that resonates with you best. And maybe that does mean you're pulling from a past life and learning about a tool that the one that resonates with you is one that you may have learned in a past life. But you're going with the one that suits you best. And if, say, there comes a time when that thrill runs out, when you're like, oh, okay, that's fine, it doesn't work for me anymore, there's so many other options you can go and look at. And don't succumb, don't fall under the peer pressure. Yeah, I know. I just talked about the deck we all bought, but that wasn't pressure.
No, that was reinforcement, because I had bought the deck first, and then everybody else was like, ooh, that looks really cool.
Yeah, Lisa actually had she actually had the deck already when I was talking about it, and I said I wanted it. And she goes, oh, you mean this one? I'm like, yeah. And then she brought it so I could actually look at it. And then I went and I was like, yeah, then I knew for sure that I wanted the deck. And then I started telling everybody, if you find the deck, I want that deck. And then and then I told you, and then you're like, I gotta have the deck. And then Phyllis is like, I gotta have the deck.
You sauntered over to my table that day.
I remember.
I did.
You had your deck, and you're like,
because I wanted you to see it, because I was like, isn't this amazing? It wasn't like, look what I got that you don't have.
No, it was not that, but it was like, look at me, I've got my deck, and it was hysterical. And of course I looked at it and had to get it. But listen, kids, that's not the way it always works. It was not peer pressure.
Do as we say, not as we do.
Oh God, I'm trying to rope it back in here. No, it's a good and powerful deck, Shaman Weaver, Shaman Dreams. It's a great deck. But there are a lot of things that people go, come on, we're doing it. Your old friends can do it too. It's not that. You've got to forge your own path here when you were looking at it. Lisa calls it on the next shiny thing, getting stuck on the next shiny thing. We don't have to do that. You get to learn discernment, and you get to work the discernment and figure out what's really going to work best for you. And that's going to help you develop your own best practices about what you're doing. But Lisa, didn't that Shaman Stream deck was not your first deck, though? What was your first deck?
It wasn't my first deck, but I was going to ask you, what's discernment?
Discernment is differentiating.
I'm kidding. Because,
So obviously my discernment between BS and a valid question is lacking.
But yeah, I mean, going back to my first deck, 3 years ago, like when I feel like I'm in this fraternity where everybody was turned on and we're like, oh, you started to awake 3 years ago? Yeah, so did I, right? It's like we all pledged together. When I returned from London, I had a really great time. Andrew, I was visiting London with him and his team of colleagues, and I did the J.K. Rowling walk. I went to Warner Brothers Studios to visit all the Harry Potter production items and so forth, and that was a lot of fun. And we visited also it was called the Leaky Cauldron. It was called the Cauldron. It was a mixology bar where it blended IoT and you could mix your own drinks. It was so much fun. I really infused myself into that atmosphere. And I think my guides are like, okay, you're ready. And I'm like, who is pushing me on my back? Well, we return home and I say to Andrew, you know what? It was like the next day, I want to go to a New Age store and I want to pick up a tarot deck. That was it. I was resolved, and this is what we're going to do. And he's like, okay. So I head to a metaphysical bookshop here in Seattle, went to the tarot cards. And of course, we talk about tools speaking to us. And it didn't jump off the shelf like a lot of practitioners talk about, but the one that I picked up is the Light Seers Tarot, right? Beautiful deck. And the color spoke to me, and I'm like, okay, you're coming home with me. We check out, we get in the car, we're driving home. I'm sitting in the passenger seat and I've got the box in my hand. And I looked down and I said, okay, well, I guess I'm doing this. Suddenly, my whole body just lit up. It was head to toe tingles. And I'm like, oh, I guess the universe thinks this is a good idea. It was the most amazing, magical experience as my first step into accepting my power and remembering.
Oh, it's like you got your first wand.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because, I don't want to be breaking things in Ollivander's shop. I had that experience that Harry did, I think, almost. Okay, moving on.
Cool.
Yeah.
So once you get your...
You don't have that deck?
I have that deck.
It's highly recommended. You should join the team.
All your friends are doing it, Kai.
Absolutely. You should too.
Will not be swayed for the next shiny thing.
Shiny object syndrome. Yep.
Exactly. I'm not doing it. All right.
So all your friends are doing it is not part of the best practices section, is it?
No, it is not. So, best practices for personal readings, when you read for yourself, because inevitably there are questions you would like answers to as well. So, there's no reason why you can't read for yourself. Although there's a lot of practitioners who won't read for themselves because they feel like they can't read for themselves. I'm not that person. I do read for myself and it works just fine. Thank you. So a best practice for doing your own personal reading is clear your energy. And, so you remove what's not you and then fill with source and then protect as a routine. So our standard motto, clear, fill, and protect. There it is. Don't forget to ground, breathe, focus, connect to source, ask the question. And remember, it's like I always say, clear question, clear answer. Ask the question, listen to the answer. Yeah. Listen to the answer.
Yeah.
Thank the guides and then let it go. You know, even if you don't understand it right at that moment, it's okay, because later on it may become clear. And it may not be even in that same day. Like I've had readings where I've done a reading and I'm like, okay, I don't get it. And then like a week later, it's like, oh, now I get it. So, you know, it may take a while, and, you know, sometimes we can be a little slow on the uptake. So, you know, just kind of go with it. Just go with it. In a public venue, best practice for that is to, again, clear, fill, protect. Clear your energy, fill with source, and protect yourself. Have a, again, clear question. Sometimes specific is good. Other times it's just, tell me what I need to know. What are my next steps? Just something generic like that. Again, you ground, you know, through breathing, and you focus, you connect to source, and then you do the reading. And then when you're done, you make sure that you clear the space. That is something that's, we talked about that. It's like sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It depends upon the circumstances. Like I personally, if I'm just doing a card reading, I don't actually clear the space when I'm done, because I don't need to. If I do energy work, however, along with the reading or the session, that's a whole nother matter. Then I absolutely do clear. So that's kind of a conscious choice, but just as a best practice, while you, if you're, especially if you're starting and you're not really sure what's happening, it's probably best to just clear the space so that you have a nice clean slate for the next person. Did you want to say something, Susie?
No, I was going to ask, is like, what's the difference? I mean, I try to clear, but I can see the difference now. So you answered the question. No worries. You must be psychic.
I think I am. Okay. So
can I just a really quick aside, Kai, and that is for those who are beginning, right? Super beginning, and they don't know what clearing the space means for them. What I learned in the very beginning stages was to use the white light to shower myself, to help clear my aura and just clear my immediate space, my little desk area, as I was pulling cards.
Yeah. And I mean, well, when I clear spaces, I actually get like the entire space. So if I'm like at a public, like an event or something, and I have a booth, I go like right to the edges of the booth, whatever that entails.
Yeah.
Table, everything in it, you know, above my head, below my feet, everything. So and talking about the differences between personal and public reading, there's a lot of energy shifting that can happen in a public space, because, you know, because if you're doing a personal reading, this is in your home, right? Within your territory, within whatever boundaries you set. In a public setting, like there basically is no rules. There is no energy boundary unless you set one. So the energy can shift constantly, and therefore when you do a reading, especially on something that's really intense, the energy can shift and it can affect the reading. So pay attention to that. The other thing about personal and public reading is that, you know, you are also facilitating another's healing. I mean, even if you're doing a reading, I mean, like recently, you know, I grumbled about the fact that I now have to have tissues on my table because I do a reading and inevitably somebody starts crying and I'm like, dang it. You know, which is, I mean, it's good because that means that person is like, I hit something and they released something, but at the same time, I'm just like, okay, and I got to clean the space and, you know, all that. So that's just laziness on my part. But anyway, but you know, you're facilitating another person's healing, so you have to be conscious of that. It's like, so that's one of those things, like if there's any kind of release that happens during a reading, whether it's a reading or a healing, then yeah, you have to clear. And then sometimes a person can actually, like, the reading doesn't, like, makes no sense at all, not even to you when you're reading. And that's just because that there is a block in place. Now, is that block yours? It's entirely possible, or it could be a block with the client. So if you really want to get to the answer, you know, an answer that makes sense, then you're going to have to do something to clear that block in some way. So that usually means energy work, which usually means clearing, right? And especially if you're well, for me, if I'm doing energy work, I definitely need to clear between sessions, so that there's no cross contaminations, and there's no oogies on the floor or the walls or anything like that.
Mm.
And you can do that between readings as well, just to make sure that, especially if you're new at reading and you don't have like a really good sensitivity of energy,
Mhm.
it's best to just clear the slate.
Mhm.
So the next person, and like I said, clear the slate, fill it in with good energy,
Mhm.
protect the space,
Mhm.
and then that makes a nice, comfortable environment for the next person to come in.
Right. Right. Almost like a doctor's office.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, yeah, you change the paper.
There we
Mhm.
go.
Throw away the needles.
Throw away the needles, change the paper,
Yeah.
wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Wash your hands. Clear, fill, and protect. New by Mystic Mosaic Podcast. New in gel form.
Tell us in the comments section what your thoughts are about this topic and share your experiences with us. Thanks.
All right. What I'd love to do is I'd like to talk about the caveats of our divination tools that we're using. Divination tools are just that. They're tools. Once you engage those tools, that's when they become that spiritual connection between you and the divine, as you are divining information and communication from the other side. There are healthy ways to use it and there are unhealthy ways to use it. So let's cover both of those. First, the healthy ways. When you're using cards, pendulum, or anything else, again, you want to set the intention. But you can also set the intention for your day or an event using those tools, right? Those tools bring clarity and they also bring focus and direction.
I will check my decks when I'm doing a public event. It's like, okay, y'all, as I'm setting out my cards, I'll shuffle them and say, what do I need to know? And they will flop down, and I'll do that with each of my decks to get that message to help. Generally, they're to reinforce my confidence in what it is I'm doing, but also whatever other messages. So that's a personal quick read that I like to use.
You use these with all your decks, Susie? At the
The
show?
ones I take to an event, yeah. So yeah, I have 3 sitting out on my table, and I give folks a choice. But as I'm setting them out, taking them out of their containers, I will shuffle them and say, "What do I need to know?" And either
Interesting.
cut them or a card sticks up. Yeah,
Interesting. Did not
yeah,
know
Yeah.
that.
It's like I will actually do that. Well, I usually use just one deck, even though I usually bring a couple with me. I usually just take the one deck and I'm like, okay, well, what do what's happening today? What do I need to know about the fair today?
Mhm.
And then, yeah, then I'll lay out some cards, and then I'll get a kind of like a barometer check, so to speak, about what's happening.
yeah.
And then, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I use my energy cards, right? So I've got the 5 energies, and I usually use those to set my intention for the day. It didn't occur to me to use them for an event, though. So that's a nice hat tip.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's a nice way to ease into that energy into it. It's like, okay, here I am doing cards. Let's do some cards. And you
Mm-hmm.
lay them out. So
Mm-hmm.
it helps me to shift gears.
Yeah. And then the unhealthy ways when we use the tools is to remember that they are not a crutch, and don't be obsessed with the tool, right? Not every decision has to be based around the tool. You want to be able to make your own decisions, right? So what we're asking for you to do is take your power back. Don't leave your power in the hands of the tool, right? It's about sovereignty. So here, some examples might include, gotta check the cards before I get going, or, oh, wait, that decision, still isn't clear enough. Use your intuition. The tools are just an extension of your abilities. Yeah, Susie.
Somebody who's trying to sidestep the issue says, but the card says.
Yeah.
But this card said, so it's trying to excuse either a bad decision or poor behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shifting responsibility. It's relieving you of that accountability. So yeah. You can't blame the tool. You got to take responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. Expecting the tool to provide absolute certainty, nothing is written in stone. So again, it goes back to the open mindset, right? It's be open, be flexible, because what you thought you intuited usually is the correct communication that's coming from spirit. However, sometimes our own belief systems tend to muddle what we hear. And so then suddenly it's like, oh, wait, what did I hear? It's like, okay, just be open. Just be open and be fluid with the energy that's coming through. This is one of my funny adages that I've learned to recite to myself, and that is oracle abuse. Don't reshuffle until you get confirmation bias. If you don't like the answer, I'm sorry, right? Sit on it, because sometimes the answer may seem harsh, but if you sit with it for 24 hours or 5 days, you're going to go, oh, you know, it did make sense. So yeah.
Reminds me of somebody I know, Reverend Carmen Murphy, the first spiritualist church of Puyallup. It's a really long thing. And I hang out with her online every so often. But this is what I call the Reverend Carmen Murphy School of Tarot. If you get a card, you read it. Mm-hmm. So they asked me for 3 cards. I find 5, or I look at it. The first time it happened, it was like, yeah, I don't like that card. And Carmen just jumped in my chili about it really hard. So yeah, I don't. I'm recovered from oracle abuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susie. But I know that Kai, you had an interesting anecdote earlier where you talk about cards holding the same message. When you are, shuffling the cards, laying them on the table, you and your sitter are both reading the same cards. However, right, the message, again, I talk about messages being muddled because of our own belief system. Do you want to elucidate on that a little bit?
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes you get a thing where, I look at the cards and I'm reading them, and then the person will say, well, I don't know if that's true, or blah 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 blah, and I just say, you know what, that's what they're telling me.
Yeah.
What you make of the message, that's on you.
Yeah.
You do what you want with that information. You asked for an answer, you got an answer. Whether or not you like it, that's on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think as people who begin to read oracle and tarot cards, when we, want to share this gift with our friends and say, hey, can I read for you? I need the practice. You read for them, you give them the reading, and they're like, I don't like that. And suddenly I absorb that and go, oh, I'm a bad reader, right? I'm never going to be good at this. And it's like, no, the issue's on them, not on me.
Yeah. And the other thing, just to mention real quick, is another friend of mine, when she started to learn to read, she was one of those where she was, flipping the cards, and then she'd go through the book and read the descriptions and stuff. And a friend of hers actually like took the book out of her hand and tossed it, and it was like, okay, now read the cards.
I've done that.
Because I mean the book is a good starting place. Like if you have a deck that like you have no clue what's going on with it, and you're trying to get some perspective on it, like it's okay to go through the book a couple of times just to kind of get a feel for it. But yeah, after that, it's like you need to be able to read the deck without the book.
Yeah But there's no shame if you do there's no shame if you use the book.
One more time.
5, 6, 7, 8. Go ahead, Lisa. I think yours is going to be salient, and then I'll probably go and burst it. So go.
Oh, nice. So you're waiting for me to, rise that balloon. Okay, so here's my balloon, Susie. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, there is no shame in using the book.
True, but don't let it become a crutch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I forgot what I was going to say too, but that was pretty much it. It's like you can become really dependent on it. It slows down the reading, and then it muddles the information, and then you never learn to trust your own intuition.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you people are like, but the book said this, and I'm just like, yeah, but that doesn't apply to the situation. That doesn't have anything to do with what's happening. And you'll lay a bunch of cards down. Yeah, and it won't make sense to you because it's like that's not the purpose of the reading. That's not the the context.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Context. That's a good word.
You know, you're missing that when you're like, oh, you're so dedicated to the book or whatever. So yeah, so that's why, you know, a lot of times, even with some of the decks that I have, you know, like I still read the book because it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. And then later on, it's like, okay, as I get more used to the deck, there's like certain cards. It's like, okay, I know what the book said about this card, but in the context of this reading, it actually means it refers to this.
Yeah.
And so that's how, you know, I will get used to my new decks until they start yakking at me. Then I'm like, okay, got it.
No, and that's a good method, Kai. And again, it goes back to what I was saying. Don't be afraid and don't be shamed into not using the book, but know that cards have lots of different discrete meanings. And so when you understand the context of the situation, take what resonates and leave the rest, because, you know, it might be a sunny day, but it may also be raining, right? And then, oh, look, you've got a rainbow. So you've got the weather and you've got three elements going on. What's most prudent and most effective in that scenario?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we hope you've enjoyed our chat about divination tools. Next up, Lisa is going to demonstrate how to use bibliomancy and automatic writing. If there's a topic or a question that you have for us, let us know. And also, please consider supporting us on this journey by picking up my printable pendulum grids at handsonfire.buzz. Getting your copy of Lisa's 2023 Energy Calendar Planner that includes digitally recording your oracle/tarot spreads at cocreatemagic.com. And don't forget to listen to Susie's amazing podcasts at bluelightninghealing.com. And don't forget that Mystic Mosaic Podcast is now on Spotify, where you can listen to us at any time.
Tell us in the comments section what your thoughts are about this topic and share your experiences with us. Thanks.
Hey, mystics. Did you know that opening a book to a random page to divine messages is a form of divination? It's true. It's called Bibliomancy. It's about opening a book to a random page to gain insight and wisdom. You can use any book to ask a question of the divine. Traditionally, the Christian Bible, among other religious texts, was the first book to be used. It was the first book printed. Needless to say, bibliomancy has been around through the ages. So let me demonstrate. If you've got a deck of tarot cards and you'd rather not shuffle to select your card for the day, you could consider using the guidebook that came with your cards. In my hand, I've got the Enchanted Map Oracle by Colette Baron Reid. And you can ask the same question you might ask your deck. For instance, what's my next step for today? Or what does the universe want me to know? Now, if you know your book intimately, I would recommend closing your eyes, turning the book around, asking the question, what does the universe want me to know? Flip it, and let's see here. I've got home. So the answer is you are comfortable in your own skin. You belong. That's a really nice message, isn't it? So if ever you have a question that you would like answered immediately, just choose your nearest book, ask the question, and then randomly open the page for your answer. Isn't this fabulous? I love this. You can do this too. Let me know in the comments if you have ever done this and what your insights were. Have you ever done a creative project and looked back and said to yourself, I can't believe I wrote that, or I drew that, or musically I played that? When you're in the flow, most likely you've tapped into the cosmos. You might pulled an idea from the universe and it flowed through your arm to your hand to your pencil. In many cases, this is done unintentionally. Intentionally done, you can divine profound messages. Automatic writing is one tool to help divine quick answers from your higher self, source, or spirit guides. Automatic writing is the art of writing words without consciously writing. Many sages, authors, and artists have used automatic writing process to deliver their messages. Conscious writing allows me to connect with anyone at any time or dimension to help unlock the secrets of my unconscious mind. Automatic writing is one of my favorite ways to stay connected with my angels and spirit guides and get some profound insights into my questions. The practice can become an intense emotional experience too. The one thing to know is that it is not journaling and it's not a crystal ball. It's also not dictation. The messages are essentially coming from your higher self. Preparing for this automatic writing experience is a lot like preparing for a reading. You want to ready your mind and body before you get into the flow. Optimally, this is done during a trance-like state. After I meditate for a few minutes, I put on headphones to keep out the noise. I begin to channel messages as I ask certain questions. The first thing you want to do is ask the right question. Refrain from the yes or no questions because the answers you're going to get are going to be long-winded. The spirit realm has a lot to say. Questions might be, what do I need to know today? Who am I? Or why does this pattern keep repeating? When you're first starting out, your spirit team may respond with something simple like, you are loved. And that's great. The second thing is don't discount what you're writing. Don't gaslight yourself out of trusting what you are writing. In some cases, I write words that I'm not familiar with and I have to go look them up. And I am wowed at the revelation. In many cases, my writing events might last about 20 minutes, give or take. I will intentionally set time aside during the day to download messages. Other times, I might get the angel radio blasting in my ear, alerting me to incoming messages. If that's the case, I'll have a few index cards handy to take the messages. I hope this inspires you to consider using automatic writing as another form of divination. Until next time, stay grounded, shielded, and magical.